Hello, I'm Ann Gritch, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this segment of the Oral History of the Diocese of San Jose. And I am particularly happy that today with us is Sister Gemma Neunzling. Sister Gemma has been with the diocese off and on, but was here at the very beginning and has some wonderful stories to tell. Sister is a Dominican from Oakford Dominican sister, and welcome, Sister.
Thank you so very much, Anne.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Your
Yeah.
accent tells me.
Yes, so I'm from Germany, and my home is, I lived in an industrial city, Ludwigshafen on the Rhine, and maybe 120,000 people, but I am part of a, I would say, faith and church community have been a lived experience in my home. And so I've spent 21 years in Germany, and my primary education, my high school was in Germany, and then I knew I had a calling to religious life, and I enjoyed the Franciscan sisters in my parish. I know the date when I knew in wonderful freedom that I would be called to religious life, but I would have burst the seams of this little community. They were so childlike. I mean, in their spirituality, I needed a wideness that I did not find there. And one day there was a Dominican sister from Africa that brought the wideness, but also the vision, the mission that probably was part of my charism. And I signed up, not knowing much about her community, and I actually joined a different branch of the Dominicans in Africa, and that is too long a story for today, but I felt very at home. So I entered these sisters in Neustadt in Germany and had my early beginnings there, postulancy, and then 60 years ago, exactly, I made my first vows in Germany, and then we were automatically missioned to South Africa. And we had, at that point, one hospital, and I showed signs of that education would be my field. And I wanted to go to the missions in Africa, and I got the okay. And then 3 days before I made vows, our confessor said, "Oh, Mädele, I hear you're not going to Africa. They didn't accept you." And
Oh my.
I said, no, that is not me. The Mother General has been here, and it's all planned. And then the novice mistress told me that the apartheid regime in South Africa had, by the 50s, taken over leadership. And they allowed our nurses into the country, but not our potential teachers. And they followed up. If we were in nursing, if we went there, we had no schools in Germany. And then I am told that I'm to go to America. And I said, I do not see that as a mission country. Then I could have stayed in Germany. But to make a long story short, it is an apartheid regime in Africa, and the San Rafael Dominican College, and those Dominican sisters who offered a study program in their college for 3 of us as their gift to the mission.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And 2 of us came. I was there, started as a sophomore, 2 days after I got to the country.
Now, did you know English?
I had English in high school for 5 years. French was my primary foreign language. So English 5, I could spell it well. I knew many words, but no conversation. So I thought this was God's trick of humiliating me to go there to study. And it was an eye-opener to I want to use the word taste, the American people, the atmosphere of California, the way we relate to people, also as religious. There were no walls. There was we were part of the wider church community, and we could influence the life. The sisters in Germany served in their expertise, or if they were nurses, they were so good, or in the kindergarten in our parish. But this was a very different scene. So our Irish sisters were the first ones that came to St. Justin's in Santa Clara.
Okay.
And I was then the second German sister. Upon completing my BA and my teacher training at San Rafael, I joined them in Santa Clara.
And we were part of the archdiocese at that point.
That's right. And our community would never have been in this country. Monsignor Mentasti had written to, I think, 30 or 40 orders to get teachers for his school at St. Justin's, which started in 59. And he went with the secretary through it and said, when she said, well, these have not yet, he said, these you don't even need to write to, they only do domestic work at the seminary in Oakland, St. Albert's, which was our group. And she said, too late, Monsignor, the cards have gone out. And we were the only congregation that said yes to him.
Well, thanks be to God.
And so we had our Irish sisters establishing a pretty good start and an atmosphere. And then these German sisters snuck in one after the other into the parish community, which gave me a tremendous sense of building of us.
Now, what grade did you teach?
I taught third grade, and I taught music in the upper. Well, there were no upper grades when I started out. When we started out, they built the school.
Each year?
Yes, and then I taught sixth grade, and music. I had the children's choir, and the parish choir, and later on, when the guitars came in, I led a guitar mass in the parish hall.
All right.
And so then I was called to Santa Clara University and taught English literature for 2 years and loved it. I had a master's from there in English literature. And my Prioress General, when I happened to be in the country when I got my contract to renew my contract for the 3rd and 4th year, and she said, no, we need you back at St. Justin's as principal.
All right.
So my happy time at Santa Clara University was shortened. But I became very happy for 8 years at St. Justin's.
And I know Father Terry Sullivan was in residence.
Father Terry Sullivan was in residence there, and Monsignor Mentasti was the pastor. And
was Father Dan Derry there also?
And Dan Derry was even ahead of Father Terry Sullivan and Michael Keane. And it was actually the next priest who came, Father Murph Sullivan, who was the first who introduced a bit of a different dimension, very much loved and deeply welcome. But Monsignor Mentasti had been a real father figure to the others, to carve the meat and,
at the head of the table.
And Terry and Dan, they just let him have it. So we saw some slight changes also for Monsignor, but the atmosphere was created. And we were so involved with the CCD program as well, which was vast. And we taught there Saturdays and Monday nights. But that was the atmosphere, the liturgy that I was allowed to affect the liturgical life in the parish. We had freedoms. It was unreal.
Wonderfully unreal.
I would have been a silent presence in Germany, let's say, almost in my own home parish. And here we could just blossom, bring the people, and we had a sense of us, people, families, priests, sisters, of working together and needing each other.
It's wonderful. Well, South Africa's loss was our gain. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Now tell me, January 27th, 1981, an announcement was made that San Jose would become a diocese. Where were you, and what was your reaction?
I was, when it was announced, I just couldn't believe it. It was like too good to be true, because we had with Archbishop Quinn a good experience too, in growingly so, in the wider diocese and church atmosphere. But that suddenly the confines of Santa Clara County would become diocesan boundaries. This made church more intimate, more reachable. It for sure was easier for me to drive to the headquarters or to have diocesan events there than to go to San Francisco. I was at that time already out of St. Justin's, and I had been elected in 1980 on Pentecost as our first regional leader. Before that, they were all appointed. So I had had a sabbatical after 8 years at St. Justin's and a year as formator at Villa Siena in Mountain View. So I was, regional for our sisters, and I was going into my second year. So other important people were for me the Holy Name Sisters, Sister Faith.
Oh, Sister Mary Faith taught me at Marin Catholic. Yeah.
I was such an inexperienced leader of such a small group, 16 or 20 that we were in that country. And she introduced me to the wider scene, to the leadership conference. She and Patricia Malpitas.
Sister Patricia Marie.
Those two took me under their wing. Yes. And we were not yet allowed to travel to any national meetings. That was against poverty. And my predecessor was very allergic to meetings to begin with. Yeah, it was no talk, but action. Yes. So, but I think my best memories are experiencing the new diocese, the life in the new diocese.
And tell us about the opening mass of the diocese. When the diocese was established, you had quite a role.
Well, you know, I had befriended Bishop Domain, thanks to Terry Sullivan. Terry Sullivan became friends with me in the parish at St. Justin's, and I had been, as a principal, very nervous to sit at a table at a picnic with Bishop Domain, because his pun on words, his fast wit, intimidated me with my thick German accent and my not catching some of the jokes. You need to know the language. So I kept a bit more distant. And one day, Terry Sullivan said, "It is your birthday then and then. May I surprise you to take you for dinner to someone you know? He's a gourmet cook." I don't even think he said he, because I had no notion. And he took me to presentation where Pierre Domain was. And I remember how I addressed him, and then he looked behind him and he said, "Who else is here? You know, Bishop or whatever." So he said, "Call me Pierre." But that is, I would say, when he had German music playing.
Oh, that's very Pierre. Yeah.
And that is one of the things that really connected me with him, German poetry and music. And like even for my final exam in high school, I had to sing Das Bächlein, a Schumann-Lied that pianos by heart. I mean, he could probably have sing it for me. and then he had Goethe, and he had so it was that part, his German, that brought him close. And the other part was, you know, I got to know him as a very private person, even though he invited all of us to his residence for a meal or something like that. When they asked, well, who does your work? Who is your house? Solidat. Do you remember he had? Yes. People thought it was a person, but it was his. And he said always to me, Gelassenheit. And Gelassenheit is a German word that you cannot translate, but he has had it, and he has it to this moment of his life. And it is costing him, but it is so real for him. Gelassenheit would probably translate as calmness in English, or serenity. But it is different from, lassen also means to let go. It's different from letting go experiences, which are so important in our Paschal mystery. It is, you still hold what you have, but with the freedom or with the trust that you won't let it fall, but you also don't cling. It is a powerful word, and I am learning it. I've learned it through Pierre. May I say Pierre in this context?
Absolutely.
Or do I have to say Bishop?
No, as the bishop would say, where, who?
Maybe, yeah. And so he has had that Gelassenheit, you know, if I would get ruffled or excited, and he will still use this word when I've come to visit him in his own place in Menlo Park and at Villa Siena. Not often enough. I actually feel troubled that I've not had more time. And I've seen him in his new place. But I want to say, to get to know this man, when I had my Silver Jubilee in '83, he had to be as bishop in Washington, D.C. And he said, Gemma, I cannot be there for your liturgy, but I will cook a meal for you when I come back. And then he said, you can invite 6 people, I'll invite 2. And I think the 2 he invited was Claude and Patricia. And he knew that I would have invited Terry, and the others were my sisters, you know, and
Lovely.
so on. And he cooked the meal, but he also, some of the dishes, he served and he walked around us. And the German sisters said, and this is your bishop? For German people, unthinkable, the closeness that we have.
Yeah.
Now in South Africa, I experienced some of that brotherliness and ease with brother bishops, or something like how they are with each other and so on. But in Germany, it was more formal, no matter how good they were and dear too. And and he knew about the German, and my family came, my parents, and he offered to celebrate the Mass in German.
Wow.
And you know, I've never seen him sweat, but I realized after Mass how much it took out of him. That is quite difficult, you know, no matter how beautiful his pronunciation was, to follow the Mass. And I could tell he had not done that much, but he kept his word, you know.
That's wonderful.
I loved his strong liturgical sense, what he brought to the diocese, how we could flourish. Vatican II could be lived. I give him credit for the place that women have held in this diocese,
Absolutely.
and how his successor, our Bishop McGrath, has honored it too. And when I think of key positions, or when I think of the leadership, what was it called? You were involved in ILM.
The Institute for Leadership and Ministry.
The training, you know, it was not only religious, it was the laity. It was the laity. And he started that, and it has continued.
Yep.
And you probably know, I think we have already had 18, 20 graduations.
Yes. In fact, it had its 20th anniversary last September.
Oh,
Yeah.
you see.
Yeah.
And you know what you have invested, but you also know, I remember on one of the papers, diocesan papers, Valley Catholic, they were on the front page. And you see the self-worth, the joy, the radiation. I saw gospel people. I said, God, this was born years ago. And it was good. But he was also particular. For instance, when he came to our old age home at Villa Siena, he celebrated Mass. And, you know, the sisters stood up properly at the right places, and some of our neighbors who come for the Mass. And the majority of the residents had to sit. And he said, just quietly, could we honor the sense of community and sit with our elder residents here, since they cannot stand with us. It is more uniting if we all have the same gesture. So he also did that, and it even showed through there, you know. I have to say that I experienced him as very gentle with women, with us sisters. And I had to be part of a meeting of him and Monsignor Mentasti.
Oh dear.
When Monsignor Mentasti did not want to leave the parish and showed signs of personal neglect and affecting his memory. And so we too needed to persuade Monsignor to come to our home at Villa Siena. But there I saw something of Pierre Domain. That was, I said, is he like this with his men, with the priests? He really became authority and was firm, even though Monsignor was so much older than he was. So there I saw that. I've also seen him very troubled when the Vietnamese community came. He did not too often talk business with me, and I didn't see him all that often. But what he communicated to me was, I understand them, that they want church unity, but I'm hoping for integration. I love to see parishes where we integrate the different cultures. And he left it standing there as a real caring and understanding what they had lost and how they needed each other's support. There I saw him really searching for a way.
Yes.
Searching for a way. And
Sister, you're being very modest. I did ask you the question about your involvement in the first Mass when the diocese was established.
Okay.
So please tell us.
Well, I got a phone call from Bishop Domain saying, could you come and see me? I'm making plans for this opening liturgy. And at that time, I was quite a singer, okay? And so I thought he probably wants me to be part of some choir. And I got there, and he said, you know, Gemma, I would like you to do a reflection on Our Lady. probably after communion. We don't let we women speak earlier on, you know, so. But he said, a reflection on Mary. And, you know, it was as if lightning had hit me. And I'm still feeling it now, because I had become distant to Mary in the convent. I had been so much into Christ-centeredness and liturgy we had an unbelievable youth program in Germany before Vatican II already, in the vernacular. I was a youth leader and I belonged to youth. And so Eucharist, Jesus Christ was the way, the truth and the life. And I got to the convent and we had all these songs of Mary, you alone are our model. You're the only way to, you know. All I know is my affect. I had been so close to Mary as a child and a young teenager. And now suddenly it cooled. I still prayed to her, but I felt a reaction. And here, the bishop, who has no notion about my journey with her, of all things he could have asked, he asked that, and he is asking me to publicly acclaim her, own her, relate to her. I think if you can have a faith experience that has a few parts to it, the first shock was when he made the request. And he gave me no help. I also do not remember that I ever had to show him the script.
Okay.
He only said, after some weeks, are you ready? Maybe I had 3 weeks. So he trusted me. And all I had were the scriptures, the passages of her, and the book Mary, the Womb of God. And with that and my own experience, I sat in prayer, and I felt I don't want to talk about her, I need to talk to her. And so I don't have the script anymore, but I addressed her as the one who was also with the early church among the disciples when they gathered in prayer. And I said, here we are, coming together in this new start of church in San Jose. Be with us, be among us. So I addressed her. And I think when I left that liturgy, something deep had happened in me that has remained. That has remained. Our Lady is a beautiful part of my life and my journey.
And I'm sure a part of those who were listening to you.
And so I am very grateful. I am very grateful to Pierre for that.
Sure.
And right now I'm having someone, Linda, at the office to see if they can find the text for
I'm
me.
sure it's in the archives. Please
Yes.
God. I had to laugh, sister, just one quick thing. When you mentioned that you had 3 weeks that Bishop had asked you, that was out of character. As you know, Bishop Dumaine was very last minute. When he arrived at a place, he never had to write his homilies. He could just come forth with them. So the fact he gave you 3 weeks was really out of character and very fine.
Good. I am glad. Yeah, I probably sat for I sat for 2 weeks until it came together for me. Yeah, that is a memorable experience for me, for him.
And now, when did you leave the diocese?
I was elected onto our leadership team, and our headquarters are in Johannesburg, Bedford View. We started in Africa as a missionary group, branching off from another Dominican group that was international. And so it meant I had to come to our headquarters. by this time I had white hair. I no longer had that youthful enthusiasm with which I was going to go to the missions. But my dream was fulfilled to go to South Africa. And so I was at the chapter when the elections happened. So I was early in '86 at the chapter in Africa. And then I had to show up in December to start my ministry of leadership. We were a Prioress General and 4 counselors. So I was one of the 4 counselors. And I have to admit, it was very humbling for me, because half the sisters at that chapter so wanted me and wanted to bring something fresh, something new from the American church and people. They hungered for a life that was not so very Germanly. Let's face it, our American sisters did not speak up in the beginning. But afterwards, I could hear how they resented that they had to eat with knife and fork, and the fork turned upside down, the way the British in Africa were eating. Or that they had to say tomato, even though they were in their home country. To be corrected by a German superior on how to pronounce the language in your country. So all I know is that there was this half the chapter delegates rooting for me, and the other half had a mindset that said, be careful, she may be smiling, but she is from California.
And you know what they're
and
like.
there is no spirituality in America, it's all psychology. And can anything good come for us from there? And you know, it was very strange. I have to say here, I got in by 1 vote. I know who would have been the next person. And so I had to trust that God wanted me.
The Holy Spirit was there.
And then I was re-elected after 6 years, so I had 12 years on that team. And during my years on the team, we did a lot of community building or helping sisters get their own voice. So we worked out of Africa, but I was in England. I came back to America for maybe workshops. We were in Germany, and I could speak the language. And so it was an international experience of leadership. And my first Prioress General absolutely, I don't want to say exploited, but drew on what I had learned in this country and could share with them. I also became one of community consultants. They were training people. They started out in St. Louis here, and I had experienced them for our own leadership team here. And we did team formation for leadership in religious life, or we facilitated groups in the church, and then later on beyond the church. So I could not be a core member, but I was an associate, and I was often called to work, and that superior, she always said, do it, Gemma, it benefits us. What you learn even with other groups. You know, so I got known in the Church of Johannesburg or in the Church of South Africa or Southern Africa, because when we gathered, let's say I would do a weekend for spiritual directors or for retreat givers, or for 5 years I accompanied a group the daughters of St. Angela, they had branched off the Ursulines, tough Zulu township women who branched off too early and had no skills. So they had a very authoritarian leader who was not accountable, nor was her team, but tried to hold the sisters accountable. But what I saw there, so I was allowed to accompany them for 5 years until they elected new leadership.
Wonderful.
And I had one of our sisters do the financial bookkeeping skills in each one of their houses. And so that was a sidekick, but that was very rewarding.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because, and if I'm very honest, I felt a little bit like Moses with my Africa. I so wanted to live among the people. And I had actually a total of 18 years in Africa, and it was always in leadership. I saw the places. I would see how our sisters were doing in ministry. And does this one maybe need, is she in burnout? Or do the sisters meet the needs of the people? Should we, make some changes? I was there, but I felt like I got to look into the promised land. And yes, there were these little black children that had their hand in my white hair. They couldn't believe that when I put mine into their little curls, into their little. So I was there, and after 12 years, I was called back. After 12 years, I would have had an opportunity to stay in a mission. And the leadership team from here said, Gemma, we need you back. We have changes here. We want you to be part of them. You've gone too long already. We gave you for 6 years. And so I came back and was part of a very interesting mission in Arizona. I was allowed almost like to be the heart of a big community center that worked with the poorest and with homeless, and with about 1,200 volunteers a month.
Oh my.
I never had to worry about the kitchen, but I was a spiritual animator and caseworker, In fact, on the staff for the first 2 years, I was the one who spoke most Spanish. Can you believe it? Poor, but I taught myself some Spanish when
Your
I was
French probably helped.
When I was in Africa, yes, and when I visited our sisters in Argentina, so that I would understand them a bit. But I was very happy in Arizona when I was called back in an election chapter. I was not at the chapter. In the middle of the night, I got a call. Actually, I got the call that I'd been elected Prioress General.
Oh my.
And I just shook. I said, Gisela, this is the middle of the night. I can't even talk to my spiritual director. I've been playing in left field with the poor here. And she said, well, we give you three hours. There are 9 hours ahead. To make a long story short, I did not accept that ministry because I was not part of the process, and I did not know what tasks were going to be ahead of us for the next 6 years. So I said, I do not want to lead when everyone else has been at the event and knows where we're going.
And I don't.
But if necessary, I will be open to be elected to the team. And that's what happened. Then I was there for almost 7 years.
And now how did you get back to the
And
diocese?
then when that term was up, then really it was time to come home. This is my home region. and that's when I came back again to this part of the world. And Sister Rosalie, who knew me, allowed me to really get back into the diocese by saying, Gemma, would you come onto the council for religious? So I have a very humble little convent setting. There are just 2 of us. I am local prioress for our sisters in the Bay Area, which is 11. And but I was for 5 years through that other ministry back in my home diocese.
Now you're doing some spiritual direction as well, is that right?
And I, it is interesting. You need mobility to really be among the poor, and I had so wanted to do that, but I developed problems with the bones, some of them very severe, but I could not walk much. So my music, which had been so much part of my ministry in so many different ways, was also through my paralysis of 1.5 vocal cord as well as the tracheostomy. So it was mobility and music were taken. So it was almost as if the Lord said, come on, Gemma, sit down and become a song. I don't need your singing. And so people come to me at the house for spiritual direction. And I am the animator, spiritual animator, or chaplain, they call me, for the Vincent de Paul in our parish at St. Martin's in Sunnyvale. And so I do a prayer sharing with the core group once a month on a regular basis. And so that is my involvement. I'm no longer on the council. I really believe new blood was necessary and saw my own limitations. But I came back. I would like to describe what I've tasted here as like Pentecost. I was out of the 37 years, I was gone 22. My 18 in Africa and 4 in Arizona. And I'm coming back and I see it has grown. The gift is multiplied. The Jesus of the gospel is showing himself in so many forms. I see the bishop at interfaith meetings. I was at one of them, just beautiful experience with Islam. I see him, I see us involved, and I was part of it with the homeless, and to connect with groups beyond the Catholic Church. So I think some of that, of course, has really expanded. Human trafficking, and yet I still feel so at home. Like I came back, Bishop McGrath did not know me. He knew our sisters, but he has given me a welcoming home, almost like a brother, and then I find out he still has an open house, a party for the religious or for the staff, and an atmosphere is created of belonging for which so many of us long. And that was my experience as a child and teenager. The social life after the war in Germany was the parish life. That was our community. And I think now we have again a leading part to give people a sense of belonging. I'm a little bit disappointed with what worship looks like in some parishes. There could be some more, but I do see many beautiful signs of life. And when we have visitors from Germany, where the churches are having less people on a Sunday than we have on a regular weekday in most of our places here. They cannot believe it. The German people cannot believe the numbers, or that men express, and also that men express their faith. Maybe in Arizona more freely than in California. Maybe they are a little bit more sophisticated here. But in general, you have articulation of faith experience, not just a creed spoken by heart. I know my faith. And that has taken a lot of effort of a lot of people. Also like you, I'm so proud when I see you as MC at our event, and you are, you are graceful, you are beautiful. It is a good witness.
Thank you. We have been blessed with both of our bishops. We really, because you know yourself, the culture comes from the top. The example comes from our bishops, and we are blessed in this diocese.
And I was not here when the change happened, when Bishop Domain retired, and when we had our new bishop, who has been quite a few years now too with us. But Pierre said to me, Gemma, I gave what I could. I've nothing new to give anymore. I've given. It was time for me. And I'm sure he was very challenged by the renovations when the church
Cathedral, yes.
When the church changed to St. Joseph's, and now it is at the heart of San Jose.
It is.
But in the beginning it looked like this little place right in the middle of downtown.
He had a vision.
Yes.
He did. Yeah.
But it has cost him, and the earthquake didn't make it easier for him.
No.
Because he could have plans for how these things would develop where the minor seminary was. So some controls, all controls are in God's hands.
They really do. And God has been very good to our diocese.
Yeah.
It has.
So I've had a sense of homecoming, and you're part of it. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm so happy that we had this opportunity to chat. Thank you so much for being with us, sister.
You're very welcome.